Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weird and wonderful world of children, explained by scientists. It is brought to you by the Developmental and Educational Science Group at Goldsmith University and by Baby Brains, the bridge between parents and society. Today, we are here with Dr. Evelyne Mercure. Thank you so much for joining us, Evelyne. And thank you, everyone, for waiting for us for a couple of minutes while we were getting all technicalities ready. So, welcome, Evelyne.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
It's really exciting to have you here. So, today, you're going to talk to us about language.
Yes, language in preschoolers.
In preschoolers. So we're going to see as parents what scientists can tell us about how we can support their language development. But without further ado, just put on your slides and we are in for a treat of a small lecture with Dr. Evelyne Mercure.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me and thank you for this introduction. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you can help your toddler develop the language skills they will need for school success. So we could say that language is the currency of education, because everything your child is going to learn in school will be explained with words, whether it is about natural sciences or math, or whether it's about poems. Usually the explanations we provide are all in using language. And for that reason, it's not so surprising that language skills at school entry are the single best predictor of school achievements across all topics throughout primary school. And this remains important as the child is progressing in their school journey, because oral language is really helping with learning to read. And then at some point, learning to read becomes reading to learn. So as the child is progressing through their journey, more and more of their learning across different topics will be done through their independent reading. And this means that in the long term, language skills influence income, physical and mental health, high school graduation rates, job placements, etc. So it's a very important skill to master from very early on. And we know that kids differ a lot in how easy they find it to grasp language or how difficult they find it to learn language. But there is an awful lot that we can do to support this learning as parents. And most of this is in daily life, little tricks that we can do in our daily routines. So the first thing to understand is that language environment is extremely important for language learning. And it is mostly the language that is addressed to the child that matters. So the child is there in their environment, they hear a lot of people talking to each other, and that does have an influence. But what really, really matters is the language that is spoken to the child and with the child. Why is that? Why is there such a difference? First of all, the language that is addressed to the child is more likely to describe what the child is paying attention to in the moment. And we know that young kids especially, they're much more likely to learn new words if those new words are talking about the things they're currently paying attention to. In more general terms, the language that is addressed to the child is also more likely to be about topics of interest to the child. So it could be about colors, about farm animals, about anything that the child is interested to. They're a lot less likely to learn vocabulary about tax return and office politics from the language they hear in the kitchen between their parents, for example. And the third reason is that the child's directed speech, we speak differently when we address a child. And this speech is more accessible to the child. It's a better tool for learning than the language we use when talking with another adult. So we change the way we speak, meaning that we usually speak in shorter sentences with a lot more repetition, a lot more variation in prosody, so in the intonation that is very good for attracting the child's attention. simpler grammar, simpler vocabulary. It is just a better signal to learn for the child. So we've said that talking with the child is very important. So the amount of talking with the child is important, but also as the child is getting older, especially, language quality matters a lot more than language quantity. And what do we mean here by quality? So this doesn't mean, this has nothing to do with having a posh accent, okay, or speaking a dialect that is associated usually with a higher socioeconomic status. Has nothing to do with this. Language quality is about two things. The first one is variety. So do we use a lot of different words when we speak with the child? Do we use a lot of different grammatical structures? Do we vary how we speak? And the variety of words that are spoken to a child better predicts the language outcome of the child compared to the number of words that are spoken. So it's the number of different words, not the number of words. So quality and not quantity. And then the second aspect is the reciprocity of communication. And for this, I wanted to show a little video, and we had a bit of technical issues, so I hope this is going to work for us.
We can do this. So, is it happening?
Nope, I can't see it.
So, let's see.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. Huh? Oh, no, not this one. This is the grand finale of it. Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're gonna do next season because they did some stuff this time. Exactly what I was thinking. Oh yeah. Right. Don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah. Like go somewhere else with that, but don't bring it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I said. And then was like, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, what in the world? Don't do that here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh? Oh, that's crazy. Right.
You probably remember Mukarram and
Okay. So that was the little video. So I hope you enjoyed this. It's a fantastic interaction. I don't know how to get the slides back on.
There they are.
Okay. So this is a really successful interaction between dad and baby. So this is what we mean by reciprocity of communication. So there's a number of things that the dad is doing here that is really helping this make it into a successful conversation. So the first one is the focus on the child's interest. So of course, the dad's language is not fully accessible to the child because the child is too young. But they're clearly both talking about the television. So they're looking at the TV, they're looking at each other, then going back to the TV, etc. So it is clear to both communication partner that this conversation is about what is in front of them. Another thing that this child does fantastically well is wait. Okay, so he's talking a little bit, but then he's staying silent. He's observing. He's looking at the child, letting the child take the lead of this conversation. So he's waiting for the child to participate in conversation. There's also a lot of imitation on both sides. So dad is imitating baby, baby is imitating dad. Dad is also responding positively to anything the child does. The child does gesture, it's fantastic. The child vocalizes, he expresses positive affect to everything the child does. That's really encouraging the child try more, to do more, to try something different. So this is what we can see in the video. As the child is getting older, other tools of reciprocity of communication could be asking open questions or relating a book you're reading with your child to your child's life. So if you're reading a book about a zoo, you can relate this to a visit that the child might have done to the zoo, that kind of thing. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about 4 different skills, 4 different language skills that are very, very important for school, and what they mean and how we can help the child develop each one of them. The first one is vocabulary. So vocabulary, we usually think of what it would feel like to learn a new language. But we have to understand that when a child is learning their first words, they're doing something completely different to what we're doing when we're learning a new language. Because if I'm learning the word cat in a different language, I already know what a cat is. All I need to do is learn a new label to put on that concept of a cat. If a child is learning the word cat, they at the same time, they're learning what is a cat. So sometimes they will say the word cat in the right context, and then you take them to the park, they point at the squirrel and they say cat. Then you're thinking, okay, we still need to work on this. So it takes a little bit of time to really get the meaning, the concept of what the word means. And this is the difficult process. So learning vocabulary is at the same time learning about the world, learning the categories in the natural world, the categories of objects, the categories of animals. So how do we help a child learning vocabulary? Simple trick is talk about their object of interest. Whatever they're looking at, whatever they're pointing, whatever is in their hands, whatever they're touching. These are instances where if we provide the label, we help them understand what this thing is, and we help them learn the word for it. We don't necessarily need to make this an activity because it fits in any activity. So it can be done in the grocery store. If you're walking around the grocery store with a child in a pushchair, if the child is looking at the carrots, it's a good time to learn about carrots. So you can label the carrots, say, oh, it's a carrot. You can talk about the characteristics of the carrot. Oh, it's orange, it's long, it's pointy, it's crunchy. You can tell them about what you do with a carrot. So we could cook it like this, we could do this like that. So these are instances where they can learn the word, so the label for it, but also the categories that this belongs to, so the characteristics of the carrot. So learning about the world and learning about the words to describe the world. Important skill number 2 is grammar. At first, when children start speaking, they will speak using just content word, mommy gone. So it's very telegraphic. It is very efficient to express simple things. But then at some point, the child would like to explain something more complex, maybe something out of the here and now, something that happened at nursery. And then just listing words is not enough. You need a little bit more tools to make the person understand. And grammar is that tool that helps you make your sentence more than a sum of its part, more than just an addition of words. So if you think of the sentences, the cat chases the dog chases the cat is chased by the dog. All 3 of them have exactly the same content word, a cat, a dog, and a chasing action. But you need to understand the grammar to really understand the difference between these things. So this is important to be able to express and understand more complex ideas. It is also very important for the child's inner speech. So the child speaks to themselves. We all do. We speak to ourselves in our mind, and it helps us learning. It helps us solve problems. So this grammar is a very important skill for learning in different contexts, learning from others, but also learning from ourselves. How do we help a child develop grammar? In one word, it's called scaffolding. So it is about building what the child needs to build the next level. Okay, so think of scaffolding on a construction site to help you build the next floor of your building. So it is about just producing a little bit more complexity than what the child already produces. So if the child says cat, you can say, oh yes, it's a big cat. If the child says cat sleeping, you say, oh yes, the big cat is sleeping. So just adding up the little bit of grammar to what the child is producing. It's not about correcting the child's grammar, it's about modeling for the child. So they're more likely to remember for next time. Important skill number 3 is mentalizing. Mentalizing, I'm cheating a little bit because it's not technically a language skill, but it's very much linked with language. So it's the ability to think about thinking. Teresa has given a really good talk about this a few weeks ago. So if you're very interested in this, you can go back and watch this great talk by Teresa. Why am I talking about this in the context of language? It's because of understanding stories. So if you're able to mentalize, you're able to understand the characters' emotions, their intentions, their motivations, also making inferences. So understanding what is not specifically said in the story, but what is suggested. And it contributes to understanding stories, whether they're presented to the child in an oral form, whether the child is being read to, whether they're reading, or even if they are looking at cartoons without any words. We know that children who have difficulties with language also have difficulties understanding stories just from pictures. How do we help the child to develop mentalizing? One very good trick here is asking open questions about the story. For example, if we're reading the Gruffalo with a child, you can ask the child at the beginning of the story, do you think the child think there is a Gruffalo? And when the mouse is meeting the Gruffalo, how do you feel do you think the mouse is feeling right now? And then at the end, when all the animals are scared, why are the animals afraid here? Who do you think they're really afraid of? So going a bit deeper about emotions, intentions of the characters so that they're learning to understand stories. And then finally, important skill number 4 is phonological awareness. So this is the ability to work with sounds in spoken languages, to manipulate them, to play with them. Why did I include this one? It's because it's the best predictor of reading development, especially at the beginning. So this is going to make the difference between a child who is finding it easy to learn to read and a child who's struggling a bit more. It's not really about the child who can name all the letters. It's not really about the child who can recognize written words, flashcards. So it's really about phonological awareness. This is what makes the difference. How do you help your child with this? It's about playing with sounds. So rhyme games, and I don't know if you know these, this series of book, Oi Frog. It's about animals that need to sit on a certain object. So the frog needs to sit on the log. So everything rhymes, and they're very funny with this very bossy, annoying cat in it. So it's a very good occasion to develop phonological skills. And then you can also have fun with your child building your own association. So where does the parrot sit? Anything that isn't in the book. I Spy games are very good as well. So I spy something beginning with, can you pay attention to words in your environment? What begins with? And also games about word length. If you ask a young child, which one is the bigger word? Is it caterpillar or is it cow? Young kids will say, oh, cow. Cow is a much bigger word. So if you train them, if you play around with words, it draws their attention on the sounds they're hearing in the language. Okay, what if the language you are using in your family is different from the one that is going to be used at school? So here my short answer to this would be, you will give your child the best chances of success if you consistently use a language you feel comfortable in. Because the skills of a child in a language tend to relate to the amount of time they interact with native speakers of that language. Okay, so if you are someone who live in England, for example, but don't have English as your native language, the best chances you can give your child is using your own native language, because you know that one best. You feel comfortable in that one, and you'll therefore be a better teacher of that language for your child. If we go back to our 4 important skills, how do you build that? By using your own language. So if we're thinking of vocabulary and knowledge of the world, you build the knowledge of the world regardless of the language you're using for it. All your child needs to do, if they're then going to school in a different language, is learn the new labels. So they already have a very big head start if they have a strong base in a different language. About grammar, of course, if they're going to use English at school, let's say Arabic at home, the rules will be different. But by having a strong Arabic, the child will have a strong understanding of grammatical complexity. They will need to learn a new set of rules, but they already understand the machine of it. Mentalizing can be done in any language. It is beyond language. It is about understanding other people. You might need to learn the vocabulary for different emotions in a different language, but really mentalizing is beyond language. So you can build that in any language. And phonological awareness, honestly, having more languages is actually better, because it draws attention to the sounds that are different in different languages, etc. I'm not saying that not knowing the language of formal education is not important. It is also important, but maybe it's something for other people to do in your environment. So it might be a good idea to maximize your child's interaction with speakers of the school language before they get to school. So that could be done through childcare, if that's part of your family environment. It can be done by attending story time at your local library, mini ballet, mini football, creative classes, whatever your child is interested in, or making friends in your neighborhood. So take-home message, trying to wrap this up all together. As we said at the very beginning, language is the currency of education. It's a very important skill to build before and during the school time. And my 4 tricks to help with this: talk about your child's object of interest to build vocabulary and knowledge of the world. Scaffold the development of grammar by giving them just a little bit more complexity. Ask open questions to build mentalizing abilities. Play with sounds to boost phonological awareness. And mostly, have fun.
Thank you so much, Evelyne. I think this is could be quite a new way of thinking about language for many of our listeners, and one that, as you point out at the end, it's fun as well. We can really see how all these things don't sound complicated at all to do with my child. It feels much more fun than sitting with flashcards and getting frustrated because there hasn't been much progress there. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I have a few questions to try and put this in perspective, because I think nowadays we feel the pressure of providing the best possible environment for our children, and in particular when it comes to language, as you highlighted, it is so important in school, and then we know school is so important for the rest. So it's kind of it almost feels like we are determining our child's success by the way we parent them, and in particular when it comes to language. So now we've learned something, and the good thing is that what you taught us is simple and fun to put into practice, but sometimes we're even too tired even to just even think about scaffolding. Like we're just busy with our dinner and the dishwasher and the cleaning, the washing machine and all of that. So where's the balance between offering our children the best possible start in life and surviving today?
Yes, I think that's a very important question. And I'd like to go back to, I think, my second or third slide. It's about quality, not quantity. So these are not tricks that you should be doing for every waking hour of your child. Sometimes your child just wants to explore their toes, and this is fine. And sometimes you, as a mother, need to withdraw and listen to your own thoughts, and that is fine as well. But it's about finding a few minutes here and there, whenever the mood is right, and making them count. Making them count by really talking about the child's focus of interest, for example. Really being there and paying attention to whenever your child is trying to communicate with you, and be able to have this reciprocity. So it's not about doing this all the time and feeling guilty whenever you're not doing this. It's about finding these few minutes, maybe every day, maybe sometimes, maybe today didn't work and tomorrow you'll have a longer stretch. So it's not about quantity, it's about these moments of quality, the moments where you notice your child is attending, and then you're making the most of that opportunity.
I really like the example that you gave us with the dad and the child in front of the TV, because we tend to think, oh, screen time, it's time where nothing happens, no parenting happens. I can only feel guilty about sitting down with my child in front of the TV. Oh no, that's horrible. Actually, it's a great learning opportunity. It's a fantastic time where you can be relaxed, and in the end, the child is just another person you can have fun with.
Yes, exactly. And this dad, he noticed that the child was in the mood for a chat, and he put that in priority at that moment, and he just goes with it, has that interaction. And I always think, like, sometimes if you have time to watch a cartoon with your child and then talk about the story, this is a great learning opportunity. It's a bit like talking about the story you've read. It is a story with characters, so there's good opportunity for mentalizing, for vocabulary, for different things. So the TV is not necessarily your enemy if you turn it into something a bit more active.
Yeah, we've been talking about that recently, last week, I think, on Wow Live as well, and I can see hearts coming in. So obviously, parents that follow us are really like it when we can reinterpret our life and just see little occasion for wonder and connection in places where maybe we didn't think they were. So thank you so much for sharing that really super cute example with us, and hopefully it will inspire us as well. I also wanted to ask you about, you mentioned that children differ enormously in how easy or difficult they find it to use language, and yet language is important. So what if we are parents of children that are not that strong in language? How should we go about it, or what should we think, or how?
Yes.
Think?
I was thinking about my first slide because it may be discouraging to parents who have a child who's finding language difficult. language, like learning through language, is what works for most, but it doesn't work for some kids, or it doesn't work as well for some kids, and this is fine. There are kids who learn beautifully in other ways. There are lots of children who were dyslexic or had severe language problems who grow up to be super successful in IT, in art, in other fields. For the biggest number, most learning is happening through language. So that for that reason, it is a good idea to nurture language for everybody. I would say if your child is finding language difficult, focus on progress. Okay, so trying to forget where other children of the same age are and try to focus on, okay, last month my child was there, now my child is here, they've made progress, they're learning. Everybody's on a different learning journey. And for some kids, they're taking the scenic route and this is what their learning experience is like. But I think we need to celebrate each child's progress and think about how we can take them just a little bit higher. So it's about scaffolding. Again, if your building is just 2 stories high, and most kids that age have a building that is 35 stories high, you still provide the scaffolding to go to that next level.
Yeah, that's a really useful metaphor. And also, I guess it applies to language, but then with all skills. Our children, they might be very strong in language and then have another weakness somewhere else. So this idea of just celebrating progress wherever that is is really applicable also in many other areas of life, I guess. Maybe we could do it with ourselves as well a little bit more.
Yes, that's very
it's
true.
important to know where we want to go, but then we live day by day, right?
Yes, yeah, it's about where you were yesterday and where you are today, where you're hoping to be tomorrow, and what you'll do to get there.
Yeah. Thank you. And we've been focusing mostly about toddlerhood and things like you've given some ideas also for a bit older children. But is there a sensitive period of language that when that's over, then things are not completely fixed, but maybe a bit more rigid? Or how does it develop then with age?
There's no switch that turns and then learning is done. So there are periods that, for example, the sounds of language, they're easier to learn very early on. That's why foreign people like me have foreign accents, because we learned English a bit later. In terms of learning vocabulary and grammar, there's not even a really sensitive period. So this is lifelong learning. A 60-year-old will tend to have more vocabulary than a 40-year-old. So we're still learning as we're getting much older. So if your child has a small vocabulary and they're 3 or 4, like one thing for sure is that they will have more when they turn 10. That's the only thing we know, is that their vocabulary is going to increase. And it's never too late. The tricks that I gave, they're the same. So you would, so if your child is then getting obsessed with football cards, if they're 10 years old, then it's about paying attention to what they're interested in, talking about what they're interested in, giving them vocabulary they don't already have about this, different topics. So yeah, the same tricks apply all the way throughout childhood, adolescence, etc.
Yeah, this brings me back to what you were saying before about the variety of the language that we use. I think it's interesting, and it's part of why it is so wonderful to raise children. I believe it's because it to have a kind of diversified language, we need to actually pay attention. We need to think. We need to be precise in the way maybe we observe something, we describe something, we feel something. And that in itself is very rich. It gives us a richer experience of life. And it's something that can make, I don't know, the most boring bus ride something that actually all of a sudden we notice, oh, there was a lot to say about that bus actually.
Yes.
So it's something that we the motivation might come to kind of enrich our children's world and give them more possibilities, but then it ends up making our experience richer as well, and it gives us the occasion to nurture the relationship between us and the child, because we just begin to notice what we tend to talk about, what the kind of things are that the child responds to. And I don't know, I have 4 children, and with each of them the conversation takes very, very different turns, and I can see the pattern. I can kind of guess now what are the kind of things that my first one will be interested in as compared to the second, third, fourth. So yeah, I just think that language is it's good to have this perspective that whatever we put in there, like the effort we put in there, comes back to us as well, and it actually makes our own life better as well. It's not just the child, which would be enough in itself.
Yes, yeah, it's about interaction. And as the child is getting older, as you said, they develop their own interests and their own personality as a communicator. So you can see that being very different across different children. And you'll probably end up learning a lot of vocabulary yourself from your children. So like gymnastics vocabulary, I don't know what these things mean. You need to explain, you need to show me, because I've never heard this word before. So it is really two partners in an interaction, from infancy with this reciprocity all the way. It is really interaction between two people.
Thank you, Evelyne. This is really good food for thought. If you had just one last sentence to tell everyone about language and how to support that in toddlers, what would that be?
I don't know if any of my students are watching this, but if they are, they will be laughing because I say that all the time. Language is a tool for communication. So language is really the tool. The important thing is the interaction, it's the communication. And the desire to communicate is really what is fueling language development. So make the communication interesting, make it fun. And I would say don't teach. So it's not about asking the child to repeat, say that properly, repeat after me. It's about an interaction. They're telling you about their day at nursery. It doesn't matter if there's a grammatical mistake. Whenever you have a chance, you can model this by correcting the grammatical mistake. Maybe today they won't notice, but still, what's important is that they're telling you about their day. And the more interested they are in telling you about their day, the more they will speak, and practice makes perfect. So this is the important aspect of it, is really the communication. And the language teaching should never take priority over the communication.
Thank you so much, Evelyne. So hopefully we will end the week teaching around a little bit less and listening more and having more fun.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much, Evelyne. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.